Millionaire thought he was marrying an ugly woman, but he was shocked when she took off the veil. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let us return to our main character. The wedding hall shimmered with golden light, chandeliers glistening above rows of guests dressed in their finest attire. Cameras flashed from every corner, eager to capture what was rumored to be the most calculated marriage of the season. But while everyone's eyes sparkled with curiosity and gossip, the groom stood cold and unmoved. Ethan Caldwell, the millionaire heir to the Caldwell Group, was a man of reputation. Tall, broad-shouldered, and known for his stern gaze, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything in life. To him, this ceremony was not about love. It was business, a merger between families. A deal sealed with vows and signatures instead of ink, on paper. And the bride? She was hidden. Her entire face was covered by a long, heavy veil. Only her hands, pale and delicate, could be seen clutching the bouquet of white roses. The veil was not lace or silk, but a strange, concealing fabric, chosen not for beauty but for secrecy. Guests whispered behind their hands, murmuring theories. Some said she must be scarred. Others claimed she was too plain for a man of Ethan's stature. Ethan did not care. In fact, he barely looked at her. His thoughts were sharp, dismissive. This is only for appearances, he told himself. 6 months, 1 year, however long my father insists. After that, I will set her aside. Oh? The ceremony began. The priest's voice echoed through the grand hall, speaking words of union and loyalty. But to Ethan, they were hollow. He repeated the vows with mechanical precision, his tone clipped and devoid of warmth. When the ring was slipped onto her finger, he did not even glance at her hand. Yet as the vows concluded, something unexpected stirred. The bride's voice, soft yet steady, carried across the hall. When she said, "I do," there was no tremor of fear, no trace of desperation. Instead, there was quiet dignity. A strength that made a few guests raise their brows. Ethan noticed it too. Just for a moment, his eyes flicked toward her veil, curious. But he dismissed the thought quickly. After the applause, after the signing of papers, the two walked down the aisle as husband and wife. Cameras captured their every move, flashing bursts of light like sparks in the air. Ethan's stride was brisk, impatient, while she followed calmly, her steps even and graceful despite the veil that obscured her vision. Back inside the limousine, silence stretched between them. Ethan leaned against the leather seat, scrolling through his phone, while she sat quietly with her bouquet in her lap. Finally, he spoke, his voice cold. "You will live in the west wing of the mansion. We will not share a bedroom. We will appear together in public when necessary. Beyond that, I expect no interference from you." Her fingers tightened around the roses, but she did not argue. She simply nodded once, her chin lifted slightly, her dignity unshaken. That calmness unsettled Ethan more than anger would have. He had expected tears, protests, maybe even pleading. But instead, she gave him silence, the kind that carried its own quiet strength. For the first time, Ethan found himself irritated not by her presence, but by her composure. The limousine pulled away from the church, leaving behind the whispers and flashing lights. Neither of them knew it yet, but the veil that shielded her face was more than fabric. It was the barrier between a false marriage and a truth that would shatter all of Ethan's assumptions. Ethan Caldwell's mansion loomed like a fortress when the limousine arrived. Its stone walls and towering windows reflected the fading sunlight, casting long shadows across the manicured gardens. Servants lined up at the entrance, bowing as the newly married couple stepped out. Ethan did not pause to look at his bride or the staff. He simply walked inside, his stride brisk and commanding. The bride followed with quiet composure, her veil still hiding her face from the world. She clutched her bouquet close, her fingers trembling only slightly, though no one could see. This was not the home of love and safety she had once dreamed of. It was a house built on rules, expectations, and a contract she had been forced to accept. Inside, the air smelled of polished wood and expensive leather. A grand staircase swept upward, its railing carved with intricate detail. Portraits of past Caldwells stared down from the walls, their eyes stern and unyielding, as if silently judging the new woman brought into the family. Ethan led her to the grand hall, then turned sharply. His tone was clipped, authoritative. "This is not a real marriage. You will live in the West Wing. You will have access to the library, the garden, and the dining hall. Beyond that, stay out of my way. I will not tolerate interference in my work or my life." Her voice was steady when she finally replied, "I understand." Something in her calmness caught him off guard again. No tears, no pleading, no attempt to soften his coldness. She simply accepted his terms with dignity, and that made him uneasy. Over the next few days, their strange arrangement unfolded. At the dining table, Ethan remained silent, eating quickly before retreating to his study. She ate quietly too, her posture graceful even when ignored. Servants whispered in the corridors, gossiping about the mysterious bride who never removed her veil outside her private quarters. Some pitied her. Others sneered, convinced she was hiding deformities. But there were moments when Ethan, despite himself, noticed things. One evening, passing by the library, he found her seated at a long oak table, her veil gently pulled back so she could read under the lamplight. He paused, unseen, watching the way she traced the words with delicate fingers, her eyes shining with quiet intelligence. Before he realized it, a flicker of curiosity stirred within him. Who exactly was this woman behind the veil? Still, his pride refused to admit it. He closed the door and walked away, convincing himself she was irrelevant. The outside world, however, was not so easy to ignore. Newspapers buzzed with stories about their union. Headlines speculated about why a man like Ethan Caldwell had agreed to marry a woman no one had seen clearly. Some articles suggested scandal. Others mocked it as a desperate move to secure his father's approval. At a charity gala, only 1 week after the wedding, Ethan and his bride were forced to make their first public appearance together. Photographers swarmed the entrance, flashes exploding like fireworks. The bride wore a flowing gown of midnight blue, her face still hidden beneath the heavy veil. Ethan offered her his arm, though his jaw tightened as he did so. "Remember," he muttered under his breath, "we play the part. That is all." She slipped her hand through his arm with elegance. Her posture was perfect, her steps measured. To anyone watching, she looked every bit the composed wife of a powerful man. Yet behind the veil, her heart raced. She could feel the weight of 100 eyes, each one burning with judgment and suspicion. Inside the gala hall, whispers followed them like shadows. Who is she? Why does she hide her face? Perhaps she is unworthy. The words cut like blades, though the bride's expression remained serene. When Ethan was called to speak on stage, the room hushed. He delivered his speech about the family foundation with precision, his voice steady and commanding. But as he spoke, he noticed her standing at the edge of the stage, her hands clasped politely, her posture radiating quiet strength. And then it happened. A group of reporters pressed too close, demanding to see her face, calling out cruel remarks. One man shouted, "What are you hiding under that veil? Let the world see the truth." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Ethan's eyes flashed with anger, but before he could react, his bride stepped forward. Her voice rang clear and steady across the hall. "Respect is earned through actions, not appearances," she said. "Judge me by what I do, not by what I look like." The room fell into stunned silence. Cameras clicked furiously, capturing her words. For the first time, whispers shifted into murmurs of admiration. Ethan looked at her, truly looked at her, with something more than disdain. There was steel in her spirit, a dignity that could not be hidden by any veil. And though he would never admit it aloud, something inside him shifted that night. But pride and old wounds are not so easily erased. As the applause slowly began, Ethan turned away, his expression carefully neutral. Yet deep within, he could not deny it anymore. This woman, veiled and mysterious, was far more than he had ever imagined. The days after the charity gala unfolded with a strange tension inside the Caldwell mansion. The newspapers that once mocked their marriage now praised the bride's unexpected composure. Her single sentence at the gala, Respect is earned through actions, not appearances, circulated everywhere. Some admired her courage, while others accused her of arrogance. Ethan read the headlines with a tightened jaw. He should have been angry. He should have reminded himself that their marriage was only a contract. Yet instead, he found himself replaying her words in his mind. He could not ignore the fact that she had not only defended herself, but had also protected his family's reputation without hesitation. At breakfast the following morning, Ethan entered the dining room expecting silence, as usual. But there she was, seated at the far end of the long mahogany table, reading the morning newspaper. The heavy veil was back in place, covering her face completely. She lowered the paper when he approached, and her voice was calm. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell." The formality irritated him, though he could not explain why. He sat down across from her, picking up his coffee. "Do not let last night go to your head. Those people will turn against you just as quickly as they applauded." Her chin lifted slightly beneath the veil. "Perhaps. But I do not live to please them." Her response silenced him more effectively than any argument. He found himself studying her again, trying to decipher the mystery that clung to her like the veil itself. That afternoon, he retreated to his study, but he could not focus on the endless reports and contracts stacked before him. Through the tall window, he caught sight of her in the garden. She was kneeling in the dirt, planting flowers with her bare hands, her veil pinned carefully to one side to avoid the soil. Servants whispered nearby, some curious, some amused, but she ignored them all. Her movements were patient, deliberate, as though every seed she placed into the earth was a promise. Ethan closed the curtain, but the image lingered in his mind. One evening soon after, the Caldwell family hosted a formal dinner with important shareholders. Ethan dreaded it, knowing his marriage was already a subject of constant gossip. His bride entered the dining hall dressed in an elegant gown, her veil flowing gracefully over her shoulders. Guests shifted uncomfortably, uncertain how to greet her. As the dinner progressed, conversation turned to business. One shareholder raised concerns about an ongoing project, presenting a complicated financial challenge. Before Ethan could respond, his bride spoke. "Forgive me for intruding," she said softly. "But if I may, perhaps the project would succeed if approached from a community investment angle rather than purely for profit. If the people see the Caldwell Group as allies, not exploiters, the long-term gains would outweigh any short-term losses." The room fell silent. Ethan stared at her, stunned that she dared to speak, let alone with such clarity. The shareholder, an older man known for his skepticism, leaned back in his chair, impressed. "An interesting perspective," he admitted. Ethan cleared his throat, quickly steering the conversation back under his control. But inside, he was unsettled. His bride had just spoken like someone who understood more than gossip columns and dinner etiquette. That night, after the guests departed, Ethan confronted her in the hallway. His voice was sharp. "Do not speak in my meetings again. You are here to play a role, nothing more." Her reply was steady. "If my role is to be your wife in name, then I will play it with dignity. But do not expect me to be silent when I see something that matters." The words struck him harder than he expected. For the first time, he realized that this was not a woman who would fade into the background of his life. Still, pride chained his emotions. He turned away without answering, but his thoughts were restless. Days turned into weeks, and their strange marriage continued. Outwardly, they were the perfect picture of a couple bound by wealth and duty. Behind closed doors, silence filled the spaces between them. Yet, beneath that silence, something was shifting. Ethan began noticing the smallest details: how she lingered in the library long into the night, how she offered kind words to the servants, how her laughter, rare but genuine, carried a warmth that unsettled the cold walls of the mansion. One evening, he found himself pausing outside her room, hearing the faint sound of her humming a lullaby. For reasons he could not understand, he stood there longer than he should have, listening, his chest tight with emotions he refused to name. The veil still concealed her face, but her presence was becoming harder and harder to ignore. Ethan Caldwell, who once swore this marriage was nothing more than a contract, was beginning to lose control over the very walls he had built around his heart. The turning point arrived one crisp autumn evening when the Caldwell Group hosted a charity banquet for local hospitals. The event was meant to showcase generosity and strengthen ties with the community. But beneath the glittering chandeliers, it was also another opportunity for investors and socialites to scrutinize Ethan and his mysterious wife. The bride appeared in a gown of deep crimson silk, her veil trailing behind her like a curtain of secrets. Guests once again whispered, trading rumors and mocking her anonymity. Ethan escorted her inside, his jaw set in its usual firmness, yet his eyes flickered toward her more often than he realized. During the banquet, Ethan was cornered by a rival executive who smirked cruelly. "Tell me, Caldwell, why hide your bride from the world? Could it be that her face would embarrass your family name?" The words dripped with venom, loud enough for others nearby to hear. Before Ethan could respond, his wife stepped forward. Her voice rang out, steady and clear. "A man's honor is not measured by the beauty of his wife, but by the respect he shows her. Perhaps you should reflect on that." The room went silent, stunned. Guests exchanged startled glances. The rival executive flushed with embarrassment, muttering excuses before storming off. Ethan turned sharply toward her, his chest tightening. She had not only defended herself, but had defended him as well. His instinct was to scold her for speaking, but he could not ignore the wave of pride that surged within him. Later that night, after the banquet ended, Ethan found himself pacing the study. He could not shake the memory of her words. He had thought of her as a burden, a woman forced upon him, yet she carried herself with grace and courage that humbled even him. The following week, Ethan's father insisted that he and his bride attend a weekend gathering at the Caldwell estate, where family elders and shareholders would meet. It was a suffocating environment, filled with judgmental eyes and calculating minds. During the gathering, Ethan overheard relatives mocking her in hushed tones. "She is nothing but a shadow behind that veil," one aunt sneered. Another cousin added, "Mark my words, she is hiding something shameful." Oh, to Ethan's surprise, anger flared in his chest. For the first time, he felt protective. Without hesitation, he placed his hand on his wife's arm and spoke loud enough for all to hear. "She is my wife. That is all anyone here needs to know. Show her the respect she deserves." Gasps rippled across the room. His wife looked up at him from behind the veil, her eyes wide. She had not expected him to speak in her defense, but the moment etched itself into both of their hearts. As the evening continued, Ethan noticed something else. His wife was not simply enduring the whispers. She was observing, listening, quietly absorbing every detail of the conversations around her. Later, when they returned to the privacy of their chambers, she spoke softly. "Your cousin's words about the new construction deal." They sounded rehearsed, almost as if he knew the numbers beforehand. "Be careful, Ethan. Someone may be leaking information." Ethan froze. How had she noticed what he had overlooked? Her mind was sharp, perceptive in ways he had underestimated. For the first time, he looked at her, not as a stranger forced into his life, but as a partner who might actually understand him. Yet his pride wrestled with his growing admiration. He told himself it was nothing, that she was still just a woman behind a veil, a contract bride. But in the quiet of the night, her words lingered, unsettling him. The days that followed deepened the tension between them. At public events, they played their roles with perfection, appearing as the dutiful husband and dignified wife. Behind closed doors, silence stretched, heavy with emotions neither dared to voice. But Ethan's eyes betrayed him. He caught himself watching her too long, listening too closely, caring too much. And every time he remembered the veil, a question gnawed at him. What truth lay hidden beneath it? The marriage that was meant to be fake was shifting, twisting into something far more dangerous. Because if he was not careful, Ethan Caldwell, the man who swore never to love, was on the edge of falling for the woman he thought he would never want. Autumn deepened into winter, and the Caldwell mansion grew colder, not from the weather but from the storm building within its walls. Ethan's bride, though still veiled, had begun to earn admiration from some who once mocked her. Her quiet intelligence and dignity could not be ignored forever. But admiration in the public eye was dangerous. It attracted envy, and envy always carried schemes. One evening, Ethan returned home to find his father waiting in the study. The older man's expression was sharp, his tone harsh. "Do you realize what people are saying? That your wife is manipulating you. That she is playing the innocent while secretly pulling strings." I warned you this arrangement would be trouble. Ethan's jaw tightened. She has done nothing wrong. Open your eyes, Ethan, his father snapped. She has turned the press in her favor. She is interfering in board meetings. If this continues, the family's reputation will collapse. Ethan clenched his fists, torn between instinct and reason. Deep down, he knew his wife's intentions were good, yet doubt crept in. What if his father was right? That doubt festered. It was fueled by whispers in the company halls, by photographs in newspapers showing her standing tall at his side, by rumors that she had her own hidden ambitions. The breaking point came at a grand holiday party held at the mansion. The hall was filled with garlands, golden lights, and the scent of pine. Guests danced, laughed, and exchanged champagne toasts. But beneath the joy, an undercurrent of malice stirred. Midway through the evening, a woman from Ethan's past approached him, Isabella, a socialite who once believed she would be his bride. Her smile was sweet, but her words were poisoned. Ethan, she purred, her eyes flicking toward the veiled woman at his side. Do you truly not know who she is? Do you not wonder why she hides her face? Secrets always reveal themselves. You may find she married you for reasons you would not like. Oh. The seed of suspicion that his father planted now sprouted thorns. Ethan turned toward his wife, his chest tight with confusion. Later that night, when the guests had gone, the confrontation came. Ethan stood in the center of the drawing room, his voice colder than ever. Tell me the truth. Why do you wear that veil? What are you hiding from me? From everyone? She froze, her hands trembling against the fabric that concealed her face. I wear it because I was told to. Because your family said the world was not ready to accept me as I am. His eyes narrowed. Or is it because you are hiding something that would shame us all? The accusation struck like a blade. She flinched but did not break. Her voice was soft, yet steady. If you believe that, then you have already chosen not to see me for who I am. The silence that followed was heavier than any storm. Ethan's heart twisted, but his pride spoke louder than his conscience. This marriage was a mistake, he said. From now on, do not speak of love or loyalty. This is nothing but a contract, and when it ends, so will we. Her breath caught, and for the first time, her composure cracked. She turned away, her shoulders trembling beneath the veil. Without another word, she walked out of the room, leaving Ethan standing in the hollow echo of his own cruelty. That night, she packed her belongings and moved into the farthest corner of the West Wing, shutting the doors between them. Servants whispered of the Cold War inside the mansion. To them, it seemed the Union was doomed. But outside those walls, darker forces were at play. The rival executive Ethan's wife had once confronted began spreading lies to the press, twisting her strength into cunning, her dignity into deceit. Articles painted her as a gold digger, a manipulator, the shadowy figure behind every Caldwell decision. Ethan tried to ignore them, but the words gnawed at him. Doubt became anger, and anger became distance. His wife, meanwhile, endured the humiliation in silence, her heart aching with betrayal. She had defended him, protected him, stood by him. Yet when the time came, he had not defended her. And so, as snow fell outside the towering windows of the Caldwell mansion, the veiled bride sat alone, her heart heavy with grief. The marriage that began as a contract had grown into something fragile and precious inside her, but now, shattered by suspicion and pride, it seemed destined to end in ruin. What neither of them realized was that this was only the beginning of a larger storm. The lies, the schemes, the hidden truths they were about to collide, and when they did, both Ethan and his mysterious bride would be forced to confront not only each other, but also the world that sought to tear them apart. Winter stretched on, heavy and bitter, just like the silence that now defined the Caldwell mansion. Ethan buried himself in endless meetings and corporate battles, but even in the boardroom, whispers followed him. The press fed on every rumor, twisting his wife's dignity into manipulation, her quiet strength into ambition. The more he heard, the more doubt coiled around him like chains. His bride, meanwhile, lived in seclusion in the West Wing. She no longer joined him at the dining table. She avoided the library when she knew he was there. Her days were spent in solitude, her nights sleepless, yet despite the heartbreak, she carried herself with the same quiet dignity, Servants who pitied her often found her in the chapel on the estate grounds, kneeling in prayer, her veil bowed low. The breaking point arrived one late evening when Ethan returned home to chaos. A crisis had erupted within the Caldwell Group. Confidential documents had been leaked, jeopardizing a billion-dollar construction deal. Board members demanded answers, and shareholders threatened to withdraw. In the middle of this storm, a photograph surfaced in the newspapers. It showed his wife entering a modest cafe, seated across from a man known to be aligned with Ethan's rival. The image was blurred, but it was enough to ignite scandal. Headlines screamed betrayal. The veiled wife's secret meetings behind Caldwell's back. Ethan's fury boiled over. He stormed into the West Wing, throwing open the doors of her chambers. She rose to her feet, startled, clutching her veil. "Is it true?" he demanded, his voice rough with rage. "Were you meeting with him? Are you the reason my company is in ruins?" Her eyes widened behind the veil, but she did not cower. "No, I was not meeting him. I was meeting his sister, who runs a small charity. I was trying to help her gain support for children in need. The man must have followed us, waiting for an opportunity to twist the truth." Ethan's fists clenched. He wanted to believe her, yet the photograph burned in his mind. "And you expect me to take your word for it, when everything points to you?" Pain flashed through her voice. "Have I not proven my loyalty? Have I not defended you when the world attacked? If you cannot see the truth in me, then perhaps you never wanted to." For a moment, the storm inside him faltered. Her words echoed the memories he had buried the night at the gala, the dinner where she saw what he could not. The countless times she carried herself with honor while others mocked her. But pride and suspicion won again. "Until I know for certain," he said coldly, "you are to remain in this wing. You will not leave the estate. And if I discover you have betrayed me, this marriage will end immediately." Her shoulders trembled, but she lifted her chin with quiet defiance. "If you cage me because of lies, then it is not my honor you are protecting. It is your pride." With that, she turned her back on him, retreating deeper into the shadows of her chamber. Days later, the truth began to surface. Ethan's assistant discovered that the leaked documents had not come from her, but from a long-trusted cousin within the company, bribed by the rival executive. The photograph had been staged, the cafe encounter manipulated to frame her. Ethan's chest tightened with guilt. He had doubted her again. He had chosen suspicion over faith. That evening, he stood outside her chamber door, listening. Inside, he heard the faint sound of her voice reading aloud to orphans she had secretly invited to the chapel, her words soft and full of warmth. Even in her own pain, she was giving comfort to others. Ethan's hand hovered over the door, his heart heavy with shame. For the first time, he realized that the woman behind the veil was not his enemy, nor a burden. She was the only person who had stood with dignity in a world filled with deception. But as he turned away, footsteps echoed down the hall. His assistant rushed to him, pale-faced. "Sir, there is more. Your rival is planning something bigger. They are preparing to expose her in front of the press, to destroy her completely." Ethan's heart pounded. The truth was finally clear to him. She had never betrayed him. She had been the target all along. For the first time, he understood the weight of his silence, his doubts, his failure to protect her. And for the first time, Ethan Caldwell knew he could no longer remain a prisoner of his pride. The storm outside was nothing compared to the one rising within him. This time, he would have to act not as a businessman, not as a millionaire, but as a husband. The morning of the press conference arrived with icy winds sweeping across the city. Ethan Caldwell stood before the mirror, his reflection stern, but his heart heavy with the weight of what he had allowed to happen. His wife had been framed, humiliated, and left alone to face accusations she did not deserve. He had doubted her when she needed him most. Now, with his rival preparing to publicly destroy her, Ethan knew there was only one choice left. In the grand ballroom of a downtown hotel, reporters crowded shoulder to shoulder, cameras flashing in a frenzy. Headlines had promised scandal, and the world had come to witness the downfall of the veiled bride. At the center of the stage, Ethan's rival executive smirked confidently, ready to unveil forged evidence meant to seal her ruin. But before he could speak, the doors at the back of the hall opened. Ethan Caldwell entered, tall and unyielding, his presence commanding immediate silence. Behind him walked his veiled wife, her steps calm, though every eye in the room was fixed on her. Ethan strode to the stage, his voice ringing with authority. Enough lies. Enough slander. For too long, you have attacked the woman I call my wife. Today, I will make the truth clear. The rival executive sneered. You defend her now? When even your own family doubts her? Ethan's gaze was sharp as steel. My only mistake was listening to the whispers of cowards instead of the voice of the woman who has stood by me with dignity. She is my wife, and I will not allow her honor to be tarnished any longer. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Reporters scrambled to capture every word. Ethan reached for his wife's hand, guiding her forward. Behind this veil is not shame. Behind this veil is strength, courage, and truth. And today, I stand with her, not as a businessman protecting his empire, but as a husband protecting the woman he loves. His rival tried to interrupt, waving forged documents in the air. But Ethan's assistant stepped forward, presenting undeniable proof that the leaks had come from within the company itself, orchestrated by the very man accusing his wife. The room erupted in chaos as the rival executive's face drained of color, his lies unraveling in front of the cameras. Ethan's voice cut through the noise. Justice will prevail, not because of wealth or power, but because of truth. And the truth is this: my wife has never betrayed me. It was I who betrayed her by doubting her. Today, that ends. Reporters erupted with questions, but Ethan ignored them. He turned to his wife, lifting her hand with reverence. I failed you once, he said softly enough for only her to hear. But I will never fail you again. For the first time, she did not answer with words. Instead, her hand tightened in his, her silence carrying more forgiveness than any speech could offer. Together, they walked off the stage, leaving the rival executive drowning in disgrace. For Ethan, this was not just an act of redemption, it was the beginning of choosing her, openly and without shame, no matter the cost. The fallout from the press conference was immediate. Newspapers that once mocked the veiled bride now hailed her as a symbol of quiet strength. Headlines shifted overnight. Caldwell's wife framed. The veiled woman speaks with dignity. Truth defeats greed. The rival executive who sought to destroy her was left disgraced, his career in ruins. Back at the Caldwell mansion, the air was different. The halls that once echoed with silence now carried a fragile warmth. Ethan no longer avoided her presence. He sought it. He found excuses to sit with her in the library, to walk beside her in the garden, to listen when she spoke. One evening, as the fire crackled in the grand hearth, Ethan finally spoke the words he had long buried. I spent so long believing this marriage was nothing more than a contract. But when I nearly lost you, I realized the truth. I do not want a contract. I want you. Oh. She turned toward him, her veil still in place, her voice quiet but steady. And if you must choose between your empire and me? Ethan did not hesitate. I choose you, every time. Wealth means nothing if I cannot share it with the woman who has already given me more than I deserve: her loyalty, her courage, and her heart. Her hands trembled as they reached for his, and for the first time, the distance between them began to dissolve. The marriage that began as a facade was transforming. No longer a cage of pride and suspicion, it was becoming a bond forged by truth and choice. And though the veil still hid her face, Ethan knew he had already seen more of her than the world ever could: her strength, her dignity, her soul. But he also knew that the veil could not remain forever. The day would come when the world, and he, would finally see the woman who had changed his life. Spring unfolded like a promise, carrying with it the scent of renewal. The Caldwell estate, once a place of silence and suspicion, now prepared for a celebration unlike the first. This was not a marriage of convenience or a contract written in cold ink. This was a vow born from choice, forgiveness, and love. The grand hall glowed with soft light as family, friends, and even members of the press gathered. The whispers that once mocked the veiled bride were gone. In their place was anticipation, curiosity, and respect. She entered in a gown of white silk, her veil flowing, but her steps steady. Ethan stood waiting, no longer the cold, distant groom, but a man transformed, his eyes fixed only on her. The vows were spoken again, but this time they carried weight. Ethan's voice was rich with conviction. I once called this marriage a contract, a mistake forced upon me. But today I call it my greatest blessing. For behind this veil is not shame or secrecy, but the woman who showed me what loyalty, dignity, and love truly mean. With trembling fingers, she lifted the veil. The hall gasped. Her beauty was undeniable, but it was her eyes that held them captive. Clear, strong, unafraid. She had endured whispers, betrayal, and heartbreak. Yet she stood tall, radiant in truth. Ethan reached for her hands, his voice softer now. From this moment, there will be no barriers between us. I choose you, not as an obligation, but as the woman I will love and protect for the rest of my life. The applause was thunderous, but Ethan and his bride heard only each other's breaths. What began as a facade had become a bond unbreakable, a union forged in fire and revealed in truth. Their story, once written in suspicion, now ended in justice, love, and the promise of forever.